Today, we are undertaking a deep dive into an individual whose singular achievement didn't just utilize the internet. It established the fundamental mechanics of how we interact with information, knowledge, and even truth in the modern world.
Exactly.
We are talking about Sergey Brin, the American computer scientist who co-founded Google and whose career trajectory is just a perfect reflection of the 20th century's collision between, well, political repression and technological freedom.
It's absolutely crucial that we frame Brin not just as another figure in the pantheon of successful tech titans, but really as an architect.
An architect, I like that.
He is someone who, through the elegant application of high-level mathematics, fundamentally altered how humanity finds, processes, and validates truth. I mean, his work didn't create the web, but it made the web functional.
It made it useful.
It made it useful to every single person listening right now.
So our mission today is to give you a thorough, synthesized understanding of Brin's journey. We've gone through the source material to connect the dots across his, frankly, incredibly varied life.
It's a fascinating path.
It really is. We're tracking a movement from his family's dramatic Soviet emigration, through the mechanical genius of the PageRank algorithm, and then finally to his current massive focus on enormous infrastructural projects.
Right, things like high-level AI development and these profound philanthropic efforts.
When we synthesize this stack of information, it feels like three core areas of impact really crystallize the narrative of Brin's progression.
I agree. And it's a narrative of increasing scale. It moves from something deeply personal, a fight against political restriction, to something that has global technological influence.
Okay, so pillar number one. We have to grasp the absolutely crucial role of his family's terrifying experience in the Soviet Union. I mean, that story of persecution and the pursuit of uninhibited information, it's the bedrock of his entire career.
It's the why. And then second, we'll need to spend some real time dissecting the intellectual leap required to invent PageRank. We can't just gloss over the fact that critics and historians have consistently compared this invention to
Johannes Gutenberg's printing press.
Exactly. And that comparison is heavy. We need to understand exactly why it's earned.
And then finally, we'll look at his current ambition, which is massive and just wildly diverse. We're talking high-altitude exploration, his return to deep AI research with Gemini,
and his commitment of over $1 billion to combat Parkinson's disease. These later ventures show the incredible scope of infrastructural problems that, continue to occupy his focus.
So these three pillars, immigration, algorithm, and ambition, they really form the clearest, most compelling path to truly understanding Sergey Brin's unique and lasting impact on the world.
I think that's the best way to approach it.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the roots of this remarkable journey, which began half a world away under a regime that was actively hostile to intellectual freedom.
The story begins in Moscow, Soviet Union. Sergey Mikhailovich Brin was born there on August 21st, 1973, and he was born into a Jewish family, and this context it's absolutely essential.
Why so essential?
Because his family, like many other intellectual Jewish families at the time, faced systemic anti-Semitism. It was baked into the system. It limited academic and professional opportunities regardless of how talented you were.
And the background of his parents, Mikhail and Eugenia Brin, it immediately establishes this context of intense academic rigor. I mean, mathematical excellence.
Oh, absolutely. Both of them were graduates of Moscow State University, MSU, which is, one of the most prestigious academic institutions in the world. Just getting that education demonstrates an undeniable intellectual foundation.
His father, Mikhail, would go on to become a distinguished mathematics professor at the University of Maryland. His mother, Eugenia, a researcher at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center.
Right. But before they could achieve any of that, they faced the constrained reality of Soviet life. We learned from the sources that the family of Sergey, his parents, and his paternal grandmother, they all share a 3-room apartment right in central Moscow.
That detail is so critical. It grounds their intellectual achievements against the material, the physical limitations of the Soviet system. They were brilliant, highly educated people, but their daily life was characterized by scarcity and constraint, not abundance.
And that constraint, combined with the institutionalized anti-Semitism, it quickly reached a breaking point. The sources point to the catalyst for the monumental decision to emigrate, which happened in 1977.
This was when Sergey's father, Mikhail, returned from a math conference in Warsaw, Poland.
Yes. And being outside the Soviet sphere, even for just a few days in Warsaw, seems to have given him this clarity of vision. He saw the limitations imposed on their family, and he concluded definitively that it was time to leave.
That moment of comparison must have been just staggering. When you return from a place with even slightly more academic and personal freedom, the walls of your own system can feel suddenly suffocating.
I can only imagine. So they decided to apply for an exit visa, knowing the incredible risk that involved.
And the response from the Soviet state was, well, it was immediate, and it was devastating. It really reveals the oppressive power the government held over its intellectual class.
The consequence was brutal. The sources say his father was promptly fired from his job. His mother was forced to leave hers shortly thereafter.
They had committed the unforgivable sin of desiring freedom, of challenging the state's authority over their lives.
And this is where the human drama really intensifies. The family then entered what was called the refusnik period,
An agonizing, uncertain limbo.
which lasted for 8 months. They had no steady income. These were two highly qualified academics, mind you, forced to take on temporary menial jobs just to survive, all while knowing their request could easily be denied.
Leaving them stateless, unemployed, and ostracized forever.
8 months of that stress, living with a 6-year-old child and an elderly parent, having sacrificed both of their established high-level careers, that is an incredible, almost incomprehensible sacrifice.
All for the sake of freedom and opportunity for their son. What is that term refusnik? What does it really imply about the culture they were fighting against?
The term refusnik is just so loaded with historical meaning. It wasn't just being denied a passport. It was a form of professional and social death. These individuals were seen as traitors to the state.
So they were pariahs.
Complete pariahs. They faced constant harassment, surveillance, and they could not pursue their true professions. For mathematicians like the Brins, whose careers depended on open academic exchange and access to global research, the Soviet state's repression of information and ideas was the ultimate stifling mechanism.
So their decision to leave,
Yeah.
it wasn't just about moving countries.
Not at all. It was about escaping an environment where the free exchange of knowledge, the very thing Sergey Brin would later champion, was considered dangerous.
That contrast, a childhood defined by the scarcity of repression of information, leading to a life dedicated to the universal organization and access of it, that is the single most profound symmetry in Brin's biography.
Absolutely. They were finally granted their official exit visas in May 1979. The sources note the immense logistical support they received during this transition. They spent time in Vienna and Paris.
Right, before securing a teaching position for Mikhail Brin at the University of Maryland.
And critically, they received assistance from the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, or HIAS. This is an important detail we will come back to later. It shows the full circle nature of his eventual success and philanthropy.
They arrived in the U.S. on October 25, 1979. Sergey was 6 years old.
And from that moment on, his academic ascent was intensely focused on mathematics and computer science. He attended Eleanor Roosevelt High School, then enrolled at the University of Maryland, following in his father's and grandfather's footsteps in mathematical study.
And his success was, well, it was rapid. He received his Bachelor of Science in Computer Science with honors and high honors in mathematics at the astonishingly young age of 19 in 1993.
19. And getting high honors in mathematics, specifically at a major American university, that just underscores the depth of that computational aptitude he inherited and cultivated.
His technical foundation was immediately put to use. Also in 1993, he interned at Wolfram Research.
The developers of Mathematica.
Exactly.
Mm.
This shows an early immersion in sophisticated tools for symbolic and computational mathematics, the very infrastructure of abstract problem solving.
The culmination of all this academic rigor led him directly to Stanford University for graduate studies. He was supported by a National Science Foundation fellowship, and he got his MS in computer science in 1995.
And he was on track for a PhD before an even bigger opportunity intervened.
Right. And if we just pause here to look at this educational path, it wasn't simply about accumulating credentials. It tells us something fundamental. It tells us that the foundation required for a true revolution in information science lay in the abstract and established principles of mathematical theory. His fluency in these systems, linear algebra, graph theory, probability, that was the essential prerequisite for solving a problem of planetary scale.
So the fundamental knowledge wasn't just coding syntax. It was the ability to apply deep mathematical theory to unstructured, chaotic data. What exactly does a background rooted in abstract mathematical systems, tracing back through generations, equip a person to see that others might miss?
It equips them to see structure where others just see noise. I mean, think of the web in the mid-1990s. It was pure, unfiltered
A
noise.
total
A
mess.
total mess. A mathematician sees a network or a graph where every web page is a node and every link is an edge. A rigorous mathematical background allows you to immediately reach for sophisticated tools like eigenvector centrality, which is essentially the study of how influence flows through a network.
This is how you differentiate between a million random links and one highly authoritative link.
Yeah, precisely. Without that fundamental fluency, the solution would have been relegated to simple keyword counting, which is what all his competitors were doing. The rigor of that academic lineage gave him the intellectual framework to impose mathematical order on the chaos of the internet.
And that mathematical certainty set the stage for one of the most fateful meetings in modern technological history. Which brings us to part 2, the search engine revolution and the creation of PageRank.
The Stanford meeting is indeed legendary. It happened during orientation for new graduate students. Brin, the mathematician focused on data mining, met Larry Page, a fellow computer scientist focused on information retrieval.
And the sources note their initial relationship was marked by intense disagreement on most subjects.
Which is funny in hindsight.
That initial friction, however, it quickly evolved into mutual respect and collaboration. They became, as the source materials describe, intellectual soulmates and close friends.
And their research focuses, though they were distinct at first, were perfectly complementary. Brin was focused on building the sophisticated data mining systems needed to extract patterns from immense data sets.
And Page was exploring a concept rooted in his academic background: how to infer the importance or the authority of a research paper by analyzing the quantity and quality of its citations in other papers.
This citation analysis concept is standard in the academic world. But applying that model to the hyperlinks of the nascent web, that was the true stroke of genius.
So the combination of those two concepts, Brin's computational power to manage the data and Page's model of citation importance, is what led directly to the core invention, the PageRank algorithm.
Let's spend some time on PageRank itself, because this is really where the magic lies. This is where Brin's mathematical rigor truly paid off.
Okay, let's break it down.
The methodology was to convert the backlink data gathered by their initial web crawler, which they named BackRub,
Great name.
into a quantifiable measure of importance, a rank for any given web page.
So how did they make that leap from simple counting to a true measure of authority? If you look back at the existing search engines of the mid-90s, like AltaVista or Lycos, they mostly operated on keyword density.
Exactly. If the word dog appeared 1,000 times on a page, that page ranked highly for dog. That approach was easily gamed, and it produced, frankly, terrible results.
Right.
Brin and Page introduced the concept of the authoritative vote. PageRank relied on analyzing the relevance and authority of the backlinks. Think of it like a popularity contest, but where the votes cast by the most popular, most trusted people count far more heavily than the votes tacked by people nobody knows.
So if a highly respected institutional website, say Stanford or the BBC, linked to your page, that single link conferred far more PageRank authority than, say, 100 links from obscure, unranked sites.
That's it. And the way they mathematically define that authoritative vote is by using eigenvector centrality.
Which is the engine under the hood.
That's the engine. Eigenvector centrality is a fundamental concept in graph theory and linear algebra. In essence, it measures the importance of a node in a network by considering the importance of its neighbors.
So it's a recursive calculation.
It is. A page is important if important pages link to it. And the more important its neighbors are, the higher its eigenvector score or PageRank becomes. This required immense computational resources and a deep understanding of abstract mathematical systems to implement at web scale.
The fundamental realization, which they formalized in their foundational paper, The Anatomy of a Large-Scale Hypertextual Web Search Engine, was that this algorithm could create a search engine far superior to any existing directory or engine.
And that word anatomy is so telling. It suggests they saw this not as a tool, but as a systematic model for understanding the living structure of the web.
And the creation of this organism, it began in the most low-tech environment imaginable, the classic dorm room startup. The early stages of Google were intensely improvised.
They really were. Larry Page's dorm room became the first machine laboratory. They were literally scavenging spare parts from inexpensive computers to build the rudimentary hardware needed.
All just to connect the nascent search engine to Stanford's precious broadband network.
And when Page's room inevitably filled with equipment, Brin's dorm room was converted into the official programming center and office for testing new designs and perfecting the code.
It was a total shoestring operation that was about to outgrow one of the world's most powerful universities.
Because the immediate effect of this rapid, hardware-intensive project was that their initial web crawler, BackRub, began causing serious technical problems for Stanford's overall computing infrastructure. They were inadvertently overwhelming the network bandwidth.
They were consuming too much hardware capacity. Essentially, they were too successful too quickly for the existing academic infrastructure to handle.
We have some great specific data points from their early operations. Even before it was officially Google, the system was already massive. By August 29, 1996, they had indexed 75.2306 million HTML URLs.
Wow. And the total content downloaded was 207.2 gigabytes. While those numbers seem almost quaint today, at the time, cataloging over 75 million pages was a colossal undertaking.
And the technology stack supporting this was sophisticated for the era. BackRub was written in Java and Python. It was running on Sun Ultras and Intel Pentiums, all leveraging the power of the Linux operating system.
Larry Page later recalled the exact moment of realization, noting they fully grasped the potential of the project in mid-1998.
Right, that was when they hit 10,000 searches a day.
And that threshold wasn't just a number. It proved that users instinctively recognized the superiority of the PageRank methodology. It was the market validation that their mathematical abstraction was working in the real world.
And here is where we return to that weighty comparison from the source material. Critics and biographers draw a direct line between Brin and Page's vision and the impact of Johannes Gutenberg,
The inventor of modern mechanical printing around 1440. It's a comparison that raises the stakes exponentially.
It is not hyperbole, and we need to understand the structural logic behind it. Gutenberg's press solved the problem of information scarcity. Before 1440, books were copied painstakingly by hand.
They were expensive, rare, and access was limited to the elite.
Exactly. The printing press allowed for the replication of knowledge at speed and scale, which helped usher in the Renaissance and the Age of Enlightenment. It decentralized knowledge production.
Okay, so Gutenberg solved the problem of replication. What problem did PageRank solve?
PageRank solved the problem of organization scarcity in an age of replication abundance. By the mid-90s, the web had solved replication. Anyone could publish anything instantly.
But that led to information overload. Chaos.
Utter chaos. You couldn't find the truth because it was buried under millions of keyword-stuffed pages. Brin and Page used mathematical order to solve the chaos problem, allowing humanity to effectively use the massive information resource it had created. They democratized access in a world where information production was already democratized.
The quote cited in the sources from the Google story drives this home. It says, "Not since Gutenberg has any new invention empowered individuals and transformed access to information as profoundly as Google."
That places Brin's work directly in the lineage of the most significant advances in human history related to knowledge distribution.
And this structural ambition didn't stop at the web. The sources indicate that almost immediately after creating the engine, their vision went beyond the web.
They began discussing massive infrastructural undertakings, like the ambitious goal of digitizing the world's books and expanding reliable access to health information. PageRank wasn't just a search engine. It was a universal organization principle waiting for new, larger data sets.
They realized they had created the greatest librarian the world had ever known, and now they just needed to find all the books, which sets the stage for the massive corporate evolution that came next.
Which brings us into part 3. The organizational structure of Alphabet, his pursuit of new ventures, and his highly significant return to artificial intelligence.
Brin, as we know, discontinued his PhD studies to officially launch Google, moving the operation into Susan Wojcicki's garage. He later served as president of Google's parent company, Alphabet Inc.
And this corporate evolution is as important as the technological one because it dictates where he focuses his capital and intellectual energy today.
The change in corporate structure in 2015, moving from Google Inc. to the holding company Alphabet Inc., was a defining moment in his career in Page's.
Yeah.
He served as president of Alphabet until stepping down on December 3rd, 2019.
Right. And for the listener who might not have tracked that structural reorganization, it's worth explaining why Alphabet was created.
Yeah, why did they do that? Why step back from direct operational leadership?
The creation of Alphabet was essentially a financial and conceptual separation. It separated their core, profitable business from their highly speculative, non-revenue generating, world-changing research.
So Google, the search, advertising, and YouTube engine, became a subsidiary.
Precisely. And everything else, Waymo, the self-driving cars, Verily Life Sciences, DeepMind, AI research, and others, were grouped under the umbrella as other bets.
So Alphabet was a way to manage risk and focus. It allowed the market to evaluate the predictable search business separately from the risky R&D.
Exactly. It also allowed Brin and Page to formally step back from the day-to-day firefighting of managing a colossal corporation. They could place operational control in the hands of CEOs like Sundar Pichai.
But, and this is the important caveat, even after stepping down in 2019, Brin and Page absolutely remain co-founders, controlling shareholders, and board members of Alphabet.
They maintained the ultimate oversight and fiduciary power.
But the real attention grabber, the signal that captured the attention of the entire tech world, came much more recently. The source confirms that in December 2023, Brin came out of retirement to actively contribute to AI research at Alphabet Inc.
That is a massive signal. A centibillionaire who has achieved everything possible, who formally retired from daily operations, decides to physically return to active development work.
And his focus is on projects related to the Gemini AI initiative. That's Google's big response to the current generative AI wave.
So the individual who designed the architecture to organize the knowledge produced by humans is now returning to help design the architecture for intelligence created by machines. That is a profound transition.
It's huge. What does his presence bring to the Gemini effort?
His return brings unparalleled institutional memory, computational foresight, and sheer gravitational focus. Brin understands the infrastructure of information better than almost anyone alive. When he shifts his focus, the entire company shifts.
So his interest confirms that he views AI as the next, perhaps ultimate foundational problem of organizing knowledge.
I think so. He moved from building the map, which was PageRank, to helping define the consciousness that reads the map, which is Gemini. It suggests he sees AI as the logical extension of the knowledge democratization project he began decades ago.
Outside of search and AI, though, Brin's curiosity is often applied to large, physical, infrastructural challenges. His air and space portfolio really highlights the breadth of this infrastructural thinking.
His investments show a consistent interest in high-risk, large-scale systems. Back in June 2008, he invested $4.5 million in Space Adventures, a Virginia-based space tourism company.
This demonstrates an early fascination with commercializing access to space, the ultimate high-altitude environment.
And his personal aviation choices reflect a similar interest, but with a scientific, research-focused twist. He and Page jointly own customized aircraft, including a Boeing 767-200 and a Dassault Dornier Alpha Jet.
And these are not simply luxury items. I mean, they are certainly expensive. They pay $1.3 million a year just to house these and two other executive-owned jets at Moffett Federal Airfield.
But crucially, the sources specify that these aircraft have scientific equipment installed by NASA to collect experimental data in flight. This effectively transforms personal assets into platforms for ongoing, high-altitude scientific research.
But perhaps the most audacious and surprising of his current infrastructural interests is LTA Research and Exploration, LLC. Brin is a major backer of this airship maker. He's bringing back a technology that has been dormant since the 1930s.
So why airships?
That's the question. Why?
This connects directly to his interest in solving massive logistical problems with elegant, low-impact systems. Airships, lighter-than-air technology, they offer several advantages that appeal to an infrastructural thinker like Brin.
Okay, like what?
They offer carbon-neutral heavy lift capability. They're capable of moving immense payloads over vast distances without needing runways or high-density infrastructure.
So it's a solution for logistics in remote areas, or maybe disaster relief where traditional transport infrastructure has been destroyed.
Precisely. It's about creating a new foundational system for physical transport, and the audacity is clear. In October 2023, LTA's flagship, named Pathfinder 1, received clearance for flight testing.
And this airship is enormous. It measures 124 meters long.
That puts it in the historical record as the largest airship since the Hindenburg to receive flight clearance.
The clearance permitted initial testing up to 460 meters over Moffett Field and neighboring Palo Alto airspaces. The scale of the attempt is just. It's almost overwhelming.
And if we connect this pursuit of airships and scientific aviation back to the bigger picture, Brin's ventures consistently reflect an obsession with solving foundational, large-scale infrastructure problems.
Right. PageRank solved information infrastructure.
And the airship is attempting to solve physical logistics infrastructure for the 21st century. He's moving from defining how we access knowledge to defining how we might physically move or observe the world itself, always through the lens of efficiency and scale.
He's a systems thinker who applies the same ambition, whether the system is an algorithm, an academic network, or a massive hydrogen-filled blimp. It's a continuity of focus applied to different layers of reality.
It really is. Whether it's digitizing the world's books or reviving a technology last seen nearly a century ago, the common thread is the search for foundational, elegant systems that radically change how large amounts of information or materials are managed and distributed.
Okay, now we shift gears completely to part 4, looking at the personal side. His vast philanthropy, the personal relationships that have drawn public attention, and the recognition that defines his global stature.
His philanthropic focus is intensely personal. It's driven by a family medical concern that brings us right back to his mother. His mother, Eugenia Brin, was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
This intimate family connection led to an extraordinary financial commitment to medical research. The sources confirm Brin has donated over $1 billion to fund research on Parkinson's disease.
He's viewing a complex biological system as another large-scale problem that can potentially be cracked with enough focused capital and computing power.
$1 billion. That's a staggering amount of money, dedicated to a specific, complex biological challenge.
His giving vehicles include the Sergey Brin Family Foundation and a donor-advised fund after jointly running the Brin-Wojcicki Foundation until 2014. These funds have directed support specifically to institutions like the University of Maryland School of Medicine, where his mother received treatment.
This massive commitment to Parkinson's research is another iteration of his overarching theme, tackling the world's most difficult infrastructural problems. He views complex biological systems as the ultimate complex system problem, just like the web.
And there is a beautiful narrative symmetry in his immigrant support. The sources note he made a significant donation of $1 million in 2009 to the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, HIAS, the very organization that provided crucial assistance to his family when they were navigating their arrival in the U.S. back in 1979.
That donation is such a powerful, intentional act of historical closure. It's an affirmation of the foundational importance of that initial support infrastructure. It recognizes that without HIAS's help, none of his subsequent achievements would have been possible.
And he also donated extensively to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, one of the foremost organizations in Parkinson's research.
Moving to his personal life, his stature means that his relationships inevitably draw intense public scrutiny. We should report factually on his 2 high-profile marriages and subsequent divorces, as detailed in the source material.
Right. His first wife was Ann Wojcicki, a biotech analyst and entrepreneur. They married in 2007, and they have 2 children together.
The separation, announced in 2013, followed reports of an extramarital affair with a Google Glass colleague. The divorce was finalized in 2015.
His second marriage was to Nicole Shanahan, a legal tech founder. They married in 2018 and have 1 daughter. They separated in December 2021 and filed for divorce in January 2022.
And that was finalized in 2023. Media reports, which are cited in the sources, pointed to a brief affair in 2021 between Shanahan and Elon Musk as a reason for the rupture.
These personal details are contextualized by his public position. When a centibillionaire is involved, even private matters become public fodder, especially when they involve other major figures in the technology industry, as was the case with the reports involving Musk.
We also note that while Brin was raised Jewish, he is recorded as not being religious.
In terms of political engagement, our sources show he has maintained a high level of engagement across the political spectrum, which we can just report on neutrally.
Factually, Brin is recorded as a donor to Democratic Party candidates and organizations. Specifically, he donated $5,000 to Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign.
And $30,800 to the Democratic National Committee, or DNC.
Conversely, he was also noted to have attended the second inauguration of Donald Trump, sitting alongside Trump supporters and other major tech moguls.
It shows a continued interaction with and financial support for the American political process across various administrations and parties.
Okay, we can conclude this section by defining his stature in terms of wealth and official recognition.
Brin sits firmly in the category of a centibillionaire. His personal wealth is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. As of September 2024, his estimated net worth was $135 billion.
Ranking him consistently among the 10 richest people in the world.
But his impact, however, was recognized long before he reached that centibillionaire status. The academic world quickly acknowledged the profound nature of PageRank.
Absolutely. In 2004, Brin and Page received the Marconi Prize, which specifically honors inventors who have changed human communication.
And they were cited for the invention that has fundamentally changed the way information is retrieved today.
And in 2009, he received one of the highest possible professional distinctions, induction into the National Academy of Engineering.
That induction was specifically for leadership in development of rapid indexing and retrieval of relevant information from the World Wide Web. This is the highest professional affirmation of the PageRank algorithm's mechanical brilliance and global importance.
He also received the Great Immigrants Award from the Carnegie Corporation of New York in 2006, which provides a really meaningful bookend to his family's journey from Moscow to global leadership.
Sergey Brin's life story, viewed through these sources, is truly a stunning fusion of high-stakes political history and abstract mathematical ingenuity, culminating in profound global influence.
So let's synthesize the core themes we've unpacked in this deep dive for you, the listener. We began with the foundation, the transformation from a Soviet-refusing family whose life was defined by the scarcity and repression of information,
Into one of the world's most powerful architects of information.
and that deeply personal experience of information scarcity directly fueled the intellectual rigor required for PageRank. It was an algorithm of intellectual elegance that became the global solution to the problem of information overload.
That foundational mathematical fluency was the essential tool for solving a global chaos problem.
And finally, we tracked his current intersection of massive interests. He's simultaneously building physical infrastructure through his enormous airship company, engaging in the highest levels of AI research with Gemini, and applying vast capital to solve complex biological systems like Parkinson's disease.
Every one of these pursuits represents a problem of extreme complexity, scale, and infrastructure.
Reinforcing the relevance of this knowledge is key. Understanding Brin's current focus, his return to AI, his commitment to airships, and his billion-dollar health research funding, it gives you a clear, actionable lens into where significant global capital and intellectual priority is being deployed right now.
His personal priorities, stemming from his unique background, really do shape the global technological agenda. And that enduring connection between his childhood and his career brings us to our final thought.
This raises an important question, something for you to mull or explore on your own as you finish this deep dive. His parents were punished by a Soviet regime for seeking freedom of movement and access to uninhibited information. His greatest invention solved the problem of organizing global information. Now he has returned to the field of artificial intelligence. So what does this profound transition from defining the architecture of search to defining the architecture of intelligence, what does that imply for the future of information access, truth, and political power globally?
That's the question.
If information was the problem in 1979 and organization was the solution in 1998, what new risks or freedoms does the architecture of artificial intelligence represent for the next generation?
That transition from forced scarcity to defining mechanical consciousness is the ultimate narrative arc of his career, and its implications are still unfolding. We look forward to seeing where Brin's journey takes him next.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.